All right, guys. So we're here joined by Rosha and Marwa. Did I say it right?
Rosha.
Rosha. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Rosha.
No problem.
And when I heard their stories, Marwa, I know we haven't met yet, but when I was hearing about their stories, I was truly inspired by just how many ceilings you both have broken. You've been, just always, the only woman sometimes in the room, the first partners in your fields. I would love to get just like an overview and an intro to all of the things you've done, and then we can jump into some questions. How does that sound, yeah?
Sure.
Please.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay, now it's on. Okay. So I'm Marwa Elzankaly. I've been practicing law for a little over 20 years now. And I grew up in Southern California. I'm originally Egyptian. I came to the U.S. when I was 7 years old, and I got into law just because when I was younger, my dad had some legal issues and, got kind of taken over by a lawyer. And I realized, there really needs to be lawyers in our community, in our family. And that was when I was 11 years old. And I went into law school mostly because of that and because of a lot of encouragement from my dad. I went to Santa Clara University Law School. And I have been practicing, most of my career actually, I've been practicing at McManus Faulkner, the law firm that I'm currently at, since the year 2000 is when I started there. It's a commercial litigation firm, which is it's a litigation firm. Most of what I do is commercial litigation. Some of the highlights of my career, I became a partner there in 2007. I was a partner there for about 5 years. One of my biggest claim to fame cases, which isn't a commercial litigation case at all, it's a case where we represented a Malaysian woman who was arrested at San Francisco airport shortly after 9/11 and the whole war on terror and all that stuff and the implementation of the no-fly list. And because her name was placed not just on the no-fly list, but on a whole series of government watch lists. She was a PhD at Stanford, nothing in her record, no reason for her to be placed there. So we represented her, filed a lawsuit, and I won 3 appeals in that case. The first of which was all appeals to the Ninth Circuit. The first of which was the first case where the Ninth Circuit basically held that that individuals can challenge the placement of their names on the no-fly list in a U.S. district court. Before that, all these cases were getting thrown out. And so as a result of that case, I won the 2009 Clay Awards, the California Lawyer of the Year Award, alhamdulillah. And that was probably one of my biggest cases. And it took 15 years to finally resolve that case, but we eventually took it to trial and got an order taking her name off the no-fly list, and then got an award of attorney's fees years and years later after we had to again appeal to the Ninth Circuit, and that was another appeal that I argued before a panel of 11 judges before the Ninth Circuit. So alhamdulillah, it's been a really good experience, and I'm still practicing law, still at McManus Faulkner, but I'm now of counsel there.
Amazing.
Amazing. Marwa was the first Muslim American partner in the U.S.
I think we need to give it up for that. Yeah.
Huge
First
accomplishment.
Muslim woman partner, guys.
Yes. My name is Rosha Jones, and I'm a partner at Folger Levin in San Francisco. We're a law firm that has a large community practice, including representing nonprofits, but also in tech and hospitality. The joke in my family is that I've been doing law since I was in the womb. And the reason for that, in particular employment law, which is I'm an employment lawyer, and that's because when my mom was pregnant with me, she was working her first job out of college in Arizona. She was originally from Iran, and her female coworker noticed that she was showing. And she asked her, "Are you pregnant?" And she said, "Oh yeah, I'm just getting out of my first trimester." And a few hours later, her boss called her into his office, and he said, "I'm really sorry, but we're going to need someone in July, so we're going to have to let you go today." And my mom was fired. And so that's the story in our family, is that since I was in the womb, I've been doing employment law. And it wasn't that long ago, right, that this happened. My mom had applications where she applied where they asked, are you married? How many children do you have? Right? So that's the US, that's not Pakistan, that's not Iran. So from an early age, I knew I really wanted to be an attorney. I think I was 13 when I wanted to be an attorney. And I also, there was kind of a theme today of supportive fathers, but at a pivotal moment in the 8th grade when my dad, he had played football for a year in college, I'd always loved sports, and I knew how to play football really well. And in PE, I had a PE teacher who was a woman. And it's, in talking about women's empowerment, sometimes it's other women who are standing in your way. And she had a rule that only boys could ever be on the A team in any sport. And we had played baseball, and I knew nothing about baseball, but when it came to football, I was like, oh, I'm like better than half of these boys. So I'm gonna go join the A team. I just walked right over. And she was like, Jones, get on the B team. And I said, no. I'm not going to. I know the rules, I know how to play, and as a result, I just sat out of class. It's my own civil disobedience. We grew up reading Thoreau and Martin Luther King. Whenever we were bored, my mom would say, do a book report on Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. So I sat out of class, and after school, when my dad came to pick me up, I told him what happened, and he's like, we're going straight to the principal's office. And the principal, luckily, was a wonderful man who said that shouldn't have happened. And as a result, right, she had tried to give me a detention for sitting out of class. That detention was taken away. And finally, I was able to transfer to a different PE teacher. But the point of that story was I had a really supportive father, and I also learned the power of challenging policies that were unfair. Then I was in high school and 9/11 happened, and I saw so many of the practices of our government that happened to family members of mine in Iran, the surveillance, spying, et cetera. And I went to a conference and heard this female attorney speak in college, and I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be her. And so I had this path to become a civil rights attorney. And I was at Berkeley and then went to Berkeley Law. And that was my whole path. Every experience was for different civil rights organizations with the ACLU, different Middle Eastern and Muslim organizations. And how Marwa and I met, and the world works in amazing ways. When I saw Marwa was going to be on the panel, I was like, this is amazing, because Marwa is one of my mentors. And I was at a dinner for Eid at a friend's house in college, and someone told me, you should really meet Marwa. One of the scholars in our community said, meet Marwa. And I got her contact information, sent her an email, and then my email died. And so this was the day there was not LinkedIn, there's not Facebook, I had no way to find Marwa. And so we lost contact. But then fast forward, after law school, and there's a lot of founders and folks in nonprofits here, the nonprofit I was signed up to work on had founders that fell out. And right before I was about to start my job, after taking the bar, they dismissed the entire legal department. We all lost our offers. And then I remembered Marwa. And I had a breakfast with her, or lunch, I can't remember now, but I still remember the conversation so well. And seeing her path and seeing what was possible, I think this conference has been so amazing at showing what's possible. I didn't know there could be a Muslim woman partner. So I kind of set on a path to learn a practice area, which was employment law, and ended up at my current firm.
Wow, what incredible journeys. And also the connection,
Yeah.
the serendipitousness of this connection is amazing. Marwa, I want to touch on you becoming the first Muslim woman partner in the States. What was that journey like? And, like we mentioned, even for our mothers, it was, 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was so difficult. And you really have broken bridges and you've really gotten in front of people. What was that journey like? And I'm sure there's other people you're going to inspire here today, too. You're definitely inspiring me. So would love to hear that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rosha. That was very, very nice. I have to say, I did not set out to become a partner. I think Nabila was talking earlier about don't make your goal to make this much money or to be in this, position or what have you. And that's so true. That was my personal experience. I was very lucky in life because I also had people who really helped me along and were there for me kind of in my hardest moments, because you do have those difficult moments when you're on that path. And I just real quick, I remember I had this experience when I was in law school where I did this mock interview after my first year of law school with this really awful partner at a major firm. And now having practiced, I now know the reputation of that particular firm, but I didn't know that when I was younger. And he basically told me I wouldn't make it, I wouldn't survive, and he just kind of had nothing good to say when I did this awful interview. And I just cried for weeks because I was like, oh my God, I was freshman year of law school. This person just really put me down. And I had someone put me in touch with another woman who was in her third year of law school, very brilliant, and was working at a big firm, starting from her first year of law school. And she just really talked me down from the ledge, and she just kind of told me, don't worry, there's a lot of hostility sometimes, particularly towards female lawyers, especially back then. This is over 20 years ago. So I really had people along the way who were very helpful. I came to work, and I just started working. I mean, my first few years as a lawyer, I worked 24/7. I rarely got a weekend off, but I just put my head down and I did it, because that's what it took in that profession, particularly in litigation. When you're in trial, you may sleep 2 or 3 hours a night because you're just constantly on the go. And I just put my head down and I worked. And eventually I got there, suddenly, and I didn't even know I was up for partnership at the time. And, next thing I know, the senior partner's coming into my office during a partner meeting, and he said, come with me. And I was like, oh my God, am I in trouble? And, he took me over to the conference room to the partner meeting, and I was scared. I mean, I thought I had done something wrong or whatever. And he said, we're offering you partnership at the firm, and you go through this initial probationary period for the first year. And I was kind of surprised, but yeah, it just took some hard work.
That's incredible. And Rosha, you are also one of 2 Iranian women partners. What was that journey like? And you've navigated so many different hurdles in your career as well. Can you comment on that?
I think someone was quoting the Nike ad earlier, and I hope for Marwa and I's sake that we're one of many, right? That's, I think, our goal, my goal in being here, and that there's many, many more Muslim women partners, women of color, South Asian, Middle Eastern partners. Right now, I was just reading a stat that women as associates are about over the majority. They're a little over 50% of law firm associates, but they're still only 27% of partners, right? So there's a big disconnect there. But similar to Marwa, I went to law school and had a journey of just thinking I'm going to be, a civil rights attorney. And when my path got really derailed, and I think we've all kind of been in those moments, I had to really think differently about how I saw myself and I saw my career. And that was really tough. I went to Berkeley, I was really active in the Muslim community, and I thought what am I if I'm not a nonprofit civil rights attorney? I thought that was just anything else wouldn't be me. And it's just been a maze now to see the work I'm doing. When I interviewed for this firm, where I've been now for 9 years, the managing partner told me, well, we do this work because we're all involved in our communities and we want to give back to our communities. And I was like, who are you? How are you a law firm? But they're all similar-minded in the nonprofit space, really active in different nonprofits, nonprofit boards. And so I knew that I had found home when I found them. And it was really a group of people that have great integrity and who work really hard. And I was there, my son, my firstborn, was my first year at the firm, and I ended up working part-time for about 4 years after the birth of my son. And as a result, I thought partnership would be much later. And in the year that I ended up making partner, I made a vow to myself that I'm going to really stop caring what everybody thinks of me at the firm. And what I mean by that is, as lawyers, you tend to work a ton. And there's a lot of FaceTime expectation. And I said, this is going to be my year of health. And I made it a point to every day during lunch, go work out. And I thought, I'm just going to do that. And then similarly, on a personal note, I had like this hip pain that had been ongoing. And I was a working mom. I like right after my son was born, I'm like, I saw that I needed surgery. I told the doctor, I was like, there's no way. I'm a working mom. My husband is in residency. I'm not going to ever have a surgery. And then that same year was the year of health, right? And I went to this physician, and sometimes you need people in your life who just break it down. And he said, I hear you're a working mom and you don't have time, but you also don't know how to be a working mom in pain. And I decided to have hip surgery. And he said, I have an opening next week. And again, instead of thinking about everything that I had going on at work, I'm like, I'm just going to do it. So I get out of hip surgery, and I get a call, kind of similarly, and I was still on medication because they told me this later. I was pretty woozy, but they said they'd want to offer me partnership. And it was a moment to myself of realizing it was at least a year ahead of it when I expected it to. But the fact that I'd put the oxygen mask on myself and taken care of myself and worked really hard. There's no doubt every 1 year, right, you have to work really hard. That it was possible, and it's been just a wonderful honor and a wonderful group of people to be a part of.
So that's incredible. First of all, waking out of surgery, and getting. Yeah. I mean, what can women not do? Honestly, I'm so inspired by some of these stories. It's just they're so impactful. And I want to touch on a stat that you actually just covered. You said there was about a little over 50% are women associates, but they, a quarter of them make it to partner or maybe even a higher position. What's going on in the world? Is it, lack of support? Do we have to put our heads down? What's the problem, and what's the disconnect going on right now?
That's such a great question, Zoya. So at my prior firm, I saw that every parent that worked there didn't last more than a year. And so I'd been there a couple years. At 3.5 years, I was the longest associate who'd been there. And I knew that I had to jump for a variety of reasons. And when I was looking at different firms, I think this is just sometimes being in the Bay Area, having gone to Berkeley, I thought, well, I want to look at prestigious firms, quote unquote. So I was looking at all these firms with crazy hour requirements. And then a recruiter emailed me about my firm. And I told my husband, I was like, I've never heard of them. I don't know. And the description said, many women partners, flexible hours, no billing requirement. And my husband said, well, that's exactly what you want. And so when I interviewed, they had many women who were partners. They had many people who worked part-time. And several of the men at the firm in the interview told me, I always make it home for dinner. I always go to my kids' events. And it's that type of firm culture, right, that really allows women to thrive so that you have flexibility, right? So there are many days of the week where I'm picking up my son from school, taking my son and daughter to school. There's many law firms where that's not possible. And I think when women get to a certain point, and age-wise, they want to have a family, they want to have some flexibility, most firms have something like an 1,800 to 2,000 hour billable requirement. That's a crazy amount of hours to be working, and that's just not conducive to spending time with your family, right? So I think a lot of firms are really rethinking those models to offer more flexibility because they're realizing without that flexibility, they're going to lose women in leadership.
They're just going to lose a lot of intellect and passion in their firms. But Marwa, what about in your experience? Kind of, you've seen it all. So what's going on in your world?
Yeah, particularly in litigation. Litigation is known for not retaining women lawyers in litigation. Especially when I first started out, I think things have changed a lot since, when I first started. But when I first started, you can go in the courtroom and you find yourself in a room mostly full of men, with very, very few women, attorneys that practice litigation. That's changed over time. I totally agree with Rosha that firms are now becoming a little bit more flexible, especially with remote work and that sort of thing. A lot of firms are going into remote work, at least on a part-time basis, where you go, a hybrid remote work situation, if not a full remote work situation. I have to say, it is, just as a practical matter, it is things do change for you when you know, get married and have children. I have a daughter. I had her when she's now 7 years old. I had her in 2017. I switched and became of counsel in part because of the flexibility that I had as of counsel, where I basically, I'm an advisor to the firm. I work on the firm's biggest sort of high stakes commercial litigation matters, but I also work as much or as little as I want. I make my own hours. I get paid based on the work that I do, and I don't have to deal with the administration. And so, it is as a practical matter, you can't necessarily do it all, right? I want to be able to have more time for my daughter and my family. And so I had to kind of switch things a little bit so that I can still practice law, I can still do litigation, but just in a different way than I did before.
Yeah, it's almost what I'm hearing is there's a lot more flexibility coming in. I had actually, so my aunt's a lawyer, and she used to work those like crazy hours. She was like, there was no chance of having a family, and there was like, you just keep going and going, and it's really, really enlightening to hear that things are changing. It's going more to a flexible workforce, because I think, without our minds or the flexibility, even for dads, right? Like paternity leave has become a thing. Like, pushing those efforts in all these different industries is really important. I know we just have another few minutes left. I wanted to ask you, if you were to give 2 to 3 pieces of advice to, budding lawyers who do want to be partners and also have a family, kind of have it all, right? Like family, time, health. Now that you've been through that journey, what would you tell them? Like, what would you tell them today?
So if I can just, I can go on and on and on. Frankly, there's so much that I've personally learned along the way, but I'll keep it succinct. Don't listen to negative people, because there will run along the way across people who really try to bring you down, who really try to get you to go into another direction. Have that network of people that are there for you, that will encourage you, whether it's mentors in the same profession or family or friends or what have you. Don't be afraid to do something different. You don't have to work with people that you don't like just to get to where you want. It's okay to want to work with people that are similar to you in personality. Litigation, there are law firms that are known for being super cutthroat, super difficult, not very tolerant, frankly, of people of different colors or backgrounds, because they think that's what they need to please their clients. But then there are law firms that are very much more laid back, that are much more diverse. Our firm just is very friendly. They enjoy what they do. They like different people from different backgrounds. And so it's a place where I fit in more. So you don't have to fit in everywhere. You could, choose wisely who you want to work with, as opposed to just taking whatever just so you can get to where you want. And also don't be afraid to take a step back, right? And think about what you want to do. I took a few years off of the practice of law. When I got married in 2012, I moved to Egypt, and I was at a time where I was literally at the highest point in my career, and I was being offered judicialship to go into the judiciary, and I just said, I don't know, this is what I want to do. I'm stepping away, and this is when I met my husband, and we moved into a little hometown and village in Egypt for 3 years and lived there. And I did nothing. I didn't practice law at all. And it was the best thing I ever did because it gave me clarity. So those are my main points of advice.
I'm taking notes.
Me too.
The first thing I would say is find an advocate rather than a mentor. So someone who's going to be on your reference list to say, she should get the job, right? Finding those people in your life. The second is being open-minded about what your career path looks like, and also being grateful for the opportunities you're given, even if it seems really difficult. What do I mean by that? After my son was born, even though I wanted to be a lawyer since the 8th grade, I just wanted to stay home. And it was really difficult. And you talk about why so many women leave. I just was I just want to quit and be with my baby. There was a lot of suffering. And just from a spiritual perspective, I had someone in our community just say, you've been given this opportunity, have acceptance. Right? Acceptance. I was the breadwinner at the time. It was not an option for me to not work, right? And when I came to it from a place of acceptance, it just was so much more joyful. It was so joyful. And fast forward all these years, like, I'm so grateful that I didn't quit. I'm so grateful that I stayed in that space. The other thing I would say, and it's funny, I'm going to say put on the Band-Aid. What do I mean by that? And I'm wearing a Band-Aid today, and I told a colleague about this story this week, so that's why I'll share it. But shortly after that time with my son was probably a year old, I had this cut on my finger. And being a working mom, it was go, 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 and I didn't put a Band-Aid on it. And we ended up in Yosemite for a family trip, and my whole hand got infected. And I had to go to this country hospital in Yosemite, and they had to lance it open. Okay, I had this huge gaping wound, and they had to suture it and get the infection out. And so anyways, this week I cut my hand, and I was in our kitchen in the office, and I said, I'm putting a Band-Aid on, and I told my colleague this story. And it's a reminder to myself that so often we're putting friends, family, parents, community ahead of ourselves, but you just have to put the Band-Aid on, period. Whether that's exercise, whether that's sleep, whether that's your spiritual practice, and not just so it'll make you a better coworker, a better employee, a better mom, a better wife, just for you, right, and for your own sake. And so I think that, like, I'm preaching this to myself first and foremost, because it took a lot. It took me a day to put the Band-Aid on. But that would be my advice, is to make sure you have that self-care as well.
No, that's incredible. It's just, it's like focus on what you want. And the resounding thing has just been passion. Like, be passionate, but make decisions for yourself. With that, I would really, really, really like to give these beautiful and amazing, talented women a round of applause. Thank you guys so much for your time today. It's truly an incredible story. And if you would like to talk to our panelists, they'll be to the side of the stage. Please do come up and ask your questions as well. That does conclude our panel, our Blazing Trails panel. So if you guys have any questions, do let me know, and we'll be right here. Thank you.
And a huge shout out to Zoya for being a really, really great moderator. Phenomenal.
I love listening to people's stories, so